So I'm talking about the solar eclipse in Cancer of 21 June 2020. That's coming up here in a few days. And the first thing I want to just take a peek into is the eclipse map. Particularly with solar eclipses, it's something we examine because it actually makes a path through the sky where the eclipse is visible. And this red line here is where the eclipse is fully visible. And I want to notice that we're starting in Africa, heading through the Middle East, India, China, and then into the Pacific Ocean. This is a large swath of humanity. So this eclipse is really going to be visible where there's a lot of people living, in fact, the majority of human beings. And just right off the bat, this is a tweet I made back in June about some of the turmoil between India and China that had emerged in mid-May. This disputed border between India and China near Kashmir has often had little skirmishes and things with rocks being thrown. And in May there was another event, but the big difference here was that the armies of both sides sent in reinforcements. And so it's almost as if this eclipse has been kind of pulling reality towards it with tension right along its path. And that's something to also know about eclipse delineation, is that we really look to the path of the eclipse to see where the impact or the effects might be most felt. And at this time, tension sort of de-escalated. There was some kind of larger skirmish between India and China right on this border. So we're 5 days before the eclipse, and 20 Indian soldiers died. So we're really looking at this to see how the impact or the effects of this eclipse might be potentially explosive. Of course, always praying for peace, hoping that this will de-escalate soon, cooler heads will prevail, and that this will become a peaceful border once again. Timing on eclipses, we can examine how they might and when they might be felt in different ways. Some people look to really that day of the eclipse, right? When the eclipse is actually happening, or the day or two before or after. Others say that the eclipse will last for 6 months, because the eclipses come in 6-month cycles, right? The nodes are opposite each other in the zodiac, and so the time it takes from the sun to be near one node and then to be near the other node is roughly 6 months. Claudius Ptolemy, the king of astrologers, he has a whole basically equation where you can calculate based on where the eclipse happens in the sky, and there's some other factors. But he claims it's 1, 2, or 3 years for a solar eclipse. So I'm not going to go into calculating all the various potentialities here. I just want you guys to know that there are these different theories, okay? We are, though, seeing that this has maybe even being felt before it's happened. And as we're getting into the moment, there is some escalation right on that eclipse path. Also, I want to be clear that Hindu scripture has this really nice way of looking at eclipses, and in their mythology, the nodes were this demon snake that would swallow the light of the sun or the moon. And that's really how we experience eclipses. We see the moon go dark in the sky, the sun becomes red, and they have this idea that it's a temporary victory of evil over good, and it's really a time for spiritual practice, prayer, mantra, meditation. I really like this, and I've just kind of felt this to be true at a gut level. I often, during eclipse season, and particularly right around that perfection of the eclipses, I like to listen to mantra for the node that the eclipse is happening on. So this will be on Rahu in Gemini. The eclipse is at 0 Cancer, but Rahu is right in 29 Gemini right now. So it's a Rahu solar eclipse. And all you do is have to just go into YouTube, type in Rahu mantra. You've got a lot of nice mantras to listen to. I like to just put them on, calm myself, pray, visualize healing and health, give kind of a surrender or submission to the greater divine energies that I know are operative in my life. So now let's just get into the chart. The eclipse is happening at 0 Cancer, ruled by the moon. Okay, and the moon is eclipsing the sun, so it's something that will bring lunar themes into prominence, and those are the themes of home, mother, and the body. Also, Mars rules the eclipse because the eclipse happens in the Egyptian term of Mars, and Mars is actually pretty strong in Pisces in its own Egyptian term, in its own face. We have this charged Mars in watery Pisces, making a trine, overcoming the eclipse via a sign-based trine, and ruling the eclipse via term. The eclipse happens in a water sign, and so there's this kind of watery moon, Mars, energy that I think will permeate this eclipse. And where we've seen these kind of martial protests of rage and anger and justified response to the injustices that people have experienced. And water settles in when you pour it out over a rock or something. It finds that bottom point. So I'm seeing this as maybe a settling period or a processing period of all the intensity that we've just gone through. Mars can be movement of the body. You think about soldiers training in barracks, right? It's all about waking up, doing push-ups, doing calisthenics, going through obstacle courses. So there's a movement component, and the moon is the body. And so I'm thinking that as a ameliorative, that folks might want to think about how the energy in your body is utilized and how you're sort of training that energy in the body. And so there's all kinds of practices, yoga, qigong, stretching, movement, these kind of movement practices that bring this contemplative approach, or even the energy moving through the body approach, I think can be maybe utilized during this period. I think there's a real call for this type of body work. The subtle body, this idea that in various occult and esoteric teachings, you've got chakras and energy channels in the body. I just know that if I'm feeling rage and anger, I often can feel it in the body. You can feel that heat coming up, in the gut and in the arms, and maybe you just want to scream or, punch something. But instead of punching something, I think there's this idea of transmuting, working with that energy and moving it around to maybe open up other channels in the body. So it's like, how can we channel this energy through body movement, through action in the body, to bring us into a greater sense of enlightenment. Maybe that's too strong, but just a greater sense of insight and knowing and awareness. I think that's the Mars Moon component that I'm really feeling, that Sirius and Mercury will still be in play, because Mercury will be retrograde, but still in that degree of its station right up on top of Sirius. So this kind of occult flavor comes into the mix. And I think with this body work and this sort of energy movement work that I was discussing earlier, there also could be maybe an opportunity to receive some kind of messages from other worlds or other realms. This is the other thing that's really interesting. At zero Cancer, there actually is this fixed star, Menkalinnon. And this star is in the Aruga constellation. I was thinking arugula, but Aruga constellation. And this is the charioteer, the great charioteer of the sky. And so there's the power of a charioteer, right? You have to control the horses. You have to have the strength, the skill to be able to navigate. And just as an aside, I want to give credit to this website. I use it often, and I know the fixed star folks and the astrology scene that I know use it often too. Constellationofwords.com, and all you do is have to go to Google, type in constellation of words, and then the name of the star or constellation that you want to know about, and you'll get the first link will be to their write-up on that constellation or star. Manilius, the great astrologer poet around the time of Ptolemy, actually, maybe before Ptolemy, actually wrote about Aruga. Here's the quote: "The charioteer lifts his team from ocean and rests his wheels from the downward slope of the horizon." So we're getting this water theme and of kind of lifting up through that water to guide a team. And I think and he also says he will impart his own enthusiasms and the skills still retained in heaven, which as a driver of a chariot he once took pleasure in on earth. And so there's this idea of driving something, guiding something, and I think as Ptolemy here says that the stars in Aruga are like Mars and Mercury. So again, we have Mars and the moon, because this star is now in Cancer. And so it's this Mars-Moon energy, I think, that really jibes well with what I was talking about above, channeling that power to commit to something and drive that energy that we feel to sort of transmute that energy and let it work for us and our skill set. All right, the other thing I want to go into is the aspects over the next astrological fortnight. And so that the lunar eclipse in 2 weeks after the solar eclipse, we're going to have a very different landscape astrologically. Venus will be direct, Mars will have entered Aries, and Saturn will have entered Capricorn. But now Mars will be, for this 8-month period, restrained by Saturn, and that tension between wanting to act and having borders or boundaries that we're abutting up to, that is going to be the reality for a month. The moon will activate this Mars-Saturn applying sextile on the 27th of June. And this sextile between Mars and Saturn is a really I'm thinking of it like the last kiss of sweetness for these two malefics before they do this squaring off that I just spoke about. So we get this kind of, this kiss. It's like, Judas betrays Jesus with a kiss, right? This is a way for these planets to exchange some goodness before they really go at each other. And you can see here on the 28th is when that sextile perfects. So I'm looking for that to give us some indications that of maybe how we can work with the square that's going to be happening for eight months. Maybe there's an invitation here or a clue about what these planets are going to be telling us. And then when Saturn enters Aquarius on July 2nd, the moon meets Saturn right away via a sextile from Scorpio. And so I'm thinking, I just want to make a note here that Saturn's entry into Capricorn gets almost instantly activated by the moon. And so that also, it just gives a little bit more juice to it. We're going to have a pretty, I think, activated introduction on the 2nd of July into what this Mars-Saturn square is going to do to us now, at least maybe in the initial phases, because it's going to be so long. Okay, cartomancy pull. This is striking because I use a random number generator to pull cards, and this is the King of Hearts. This is the card that corresponds with Cancer. And so everything I've just discussed about Cancer has really hit home here. I think that when you talk about a king, you're talking about kind of someone who's fully settled in that energy, someone who really has control over that emotional space in maybe a very regal way. In other decks, you see this is the Chariot. So again, it fits with that Aruga constellation of Aruga being the charioteer. So this is the Chariot card in the major arcana of the tarot. And it's the ability to have that real control over the emotional response and be able to channel it, to direct it into projects or aspects of reality that you want to give it to. And so I wish you guys luck over the next astrological fortnight. I will be back to make videos every astrological fortnight. And you can always go to my website, sjanderson144.com, book a donation-based reading. I look forward to reading for you. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at sjanderson144.